It's time to hear the story, make the connection, learn the lesson, and gain the wisdom. Are you ready? Let's get charged and be changed. The Sister Speak Brother Break Show. Conversations on grace, healing, and deliverance. This is Marcy Bush. Come on, let's journey together.
Some of these things I didn't know hurt me and was still seed in me until I was an adult.
Right. Because by that time, baby, it ain't no seed no more.
No,
You're dealing with a tree.
a whole tree.
A whole tree with fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we don't even know where the fruit has come from. But it started from that seed that someone planted through their words. It's not always through an action. It's through words. And when you, like I said, and I encourage you, even as you continue moving forward, I believe that so many times the way forward is to look backward, to sit in it for a moment, not to become depressed. I never want anybody to, and I shared this with a particular loved one specifically, where I've encouraged her, because her memory is really good, but don't just remember and continue to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Remember to heal. Remember to because for me, it's something about laying that axe at that root. It's one thing, you can remember certain things and it's like cutting back a limb, but it's another thing to go to the point of impact, to the point where that seed was dropped. And man, when you start going at those roots, it's a whole different level of power that you gain over that thing, and insight and wisdom. I heard maybe a few months ago, and maybe the term has been out there before, but I just heard it a couple of months ago, the term post-traumatic wisdom. Oh my gosh. That thing blessed me, because so many times we think about the trauma in our lives and all the havoc that it wreaked. But God ain't doing it, ain't allowing it for it to kill us. He is allowing that thing. And if we do it right, we gain some wisdom. And then we take that wisdom with us and we help unlock other people. And so I really encourage you, different things, different times. Just sit. When there was a day when the Lord told me, whatever comes up today, no matter how trivial it seems, don't dismiss it. I was like, okay. And there was a memory that came up that was not a bad memory necessarily, but it helped me. And I don't think I've ever shared it on the program, but it feels right in this conversation. I was dealing with, I felt abandonment on me at times. Like I would feel like, if you've seen the picture of the kid sitting on the stoop waiting on his dad to come and he never came, I would feel that kind of like abandonment. And I'm going, but this is utterly ridiculous. I grew up with my mom and dad and my 8 sisters and brothers. We had a huge family. I was never left on any stoop anywhere. So God, where does this abandonment thing come from? The day that he told me, even if it's trivial, even if it seems trivial, don't dismiss it. That day I was in prayer and I saw myself as a child. And I remember when one of my sisters got married, we had an adjoining room. And me and one sister were in one room. 2 of my other sisters were in the other room. But both of them got married, and the sister that was in the room with me was going to move to the other room. Theo, I begged her not to move in the other room. Please, I won't bother you. I won't bother you. Just stay. You ain't got to move. You and she's like, Mercy, I'm going right, literally an adjoining room. She's like, I'm going right here. I'm like, but please don't go. And she's like, Marcy, I'm gonna be right here. Theo, I started sleeping at the foot of my bed so I could look in her room. Like it was crazy. And so when God starts showing me that, I'm going, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
What happened because I was the baby of the family and I was 20 years younger than my oldest sister. And she was actually gone before I was ever born. She was in college, had gotten married, and she was expected when I was born. I saw each one of my sisters and brothers leave the home. Okay. As an adult, I know that's what grown people do.
Mm-hmm.
You grow up and you leave. But as a child, it felt like everybody was leaving me. I never even knew it until I was like 48, 49 years old. I never understood where abandonment came from.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I see how you and your wife even deal with your children and how patient you are and how love, and they can be screaming at the top of their lungs and y'all just like, come on. I'm like, oh Jesus, give me some of that because I ain't got that right there. But but it matters how you handle it because we don't know that those interactions are forming who they are and how they connect with people and how they react to people. And it's the things, like I said, as children, I heard somebody say a lot of times rather than asking people, why do you do that? You need to say, what happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
Because what happened to them is what formed them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, just as I say, and I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to everybody watching. When these memories come up, whether they're good or bad, let's mark what made that stand out. So, even like with your children, how did you find within you what it took to become a good father when you did not have a good father figure? Or maybe you did, not from the ones that were in your home. You didn't have good father figures. But what brought together this thing that we see as Theo and fatherhood?
I think for me, I've always been, well, let me say this. For 51, you look real good. When I tell you the
Thank you,
truth,
sir.
I never would have assumed that you were 51 years old.
Well, thank you, sir.
But I think, going back, I did have an uncle, and I'm going to kind of hit on a question that you asked earlier, or a statement that you said about this abandonment, because all of the uncles was really, really, really close to passed on. And they passed on before I was married. And they passed on before I, of course, have children. I remember my grandmother, who is now passed, who told me and motivated me, which is my mom's mother, who always told me, honor your mother and father. Go by over there and see your father. Go by and see your other grandmother. And she always forced that on us. Not necessarily forced us, but motivated us and encouraged us to do it.
Right.
And I remember just hearing her in my whole heart and in a room. Me and Michelle was married at the time and lived in a little 2-bedroom condo. And God woke me up in the middle of the night, and I had to call my father, even though I apologized to him before. And I apologize for him. And I say this every time I speak to young men, and they look at me with the side eye like, why are you apologizing to that man? He left y'all. But I had to really understand his story. And I didn't understand it, nor did I give him room to speak his story. Then I was able to learn with tears in my eyes and with tears in his eyes over the phone, apologizing. I'm saying to him, Dad, I'm sorry. And he was like, what are you sorry about? He said, you shouldn't be sorry. I said, no, I spoke about you. I went to school and said, no, I ain't got a daddy. Don't call me Theotis. My name is Theotis after him. And I went by Alex all the time because I didn't want to be called Theotis. I couldn't stand it because it was my father's name. And every time I heard someone say Theotis, that memory of him leaving me came. And I told him on the phone how God woke me up, and God was dealing with me the whole month about how could you be a father to Graceland before you even know the capacity of being a father? Do you even know step one of how to hold a child? Do you know all of these assets of being a father? And I didn't. I thought I did, and I can Google anything to try to figure out what are the best steps to be a father, but that's somebody else's expectations or somebody else's, experience. So I was on the phone with him crying. Michelle woke up and she was just trying to figure out what was going on. And I talked to my stepmother, and I was crying to her, and I apologized to her because I didn't validate the marriage. I didn't validate her existence. I didn't call her mama or stepmom. I called her Joyce. And I never wanted her to call me son. It was like I already had a mama, and I've already dealt with trying to call somebody else a stepfather who did not match what I needed. And so I didn't give her space or room, understanding that I was healing her because she couldn't have children. And so all I could be was the son that she needed. And so going to that, really leaning on the aspect of my uncles who were not in the home and were miles and miles away, but I could only take memory of what I saw them and how they handled their wives and their children. And even now into this expectation, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was Graceland, I don't know how old she was, but I took a belt out like I was getting ready to whoop her. And if you see Graceland, she looks like me when I was a child, and she did this as though I was scaring her. And what took me back was my stepfather doing that to me. And I immediately hugged her and embraced her and said, Graceland, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for scaring you that way. I'm sorry for giving you that reaction. And then I think God made that moment for me not to backtrack memory and bring memory into my current fatherhood. Even today, and you can ask Michelle, to this day, I always ask her, how am I doing? Am I doing a good job to be a father? I ask my children, do you love me? Am I doing anything to scare you? Am I doing anything to harm you? Is my voice too loud? I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I continue to say that. And then after I correct them, I continue to say, I love you. You know, I love you, right? You know, I'm only doing this to make you a good citizen. You know, I'm doing this only to make you a great and a beautiful young lady, a beautiful, handsome young man. And so I continue to validate my children. There's nothing in my childhood experience that I bring into my parenting, even my marriage. There's nothing in my childhood that I bring in. I told Michelle when I married her, and I told her when we were having our children, that we are to create a new philosophy of marriage. We are to create a new philosophy of raising children. And that's going to change year to year. It's going to change day to day. But we have to be open-minded to have and create a space for us to grow within this philosophy that we're trying to build and define. And that's what you see in us today. When we when we may be having a crying child, and we're like, you know what? It's better for me to be quiet and silent, because if I say something, I may damage, and I may say something to hurt her for a lifetime. And I have to go back and create something, because sometimes when we see children in schools and when we see children in different spaces and they're hurting or they're silent and they're not talking, it's because of somebody said something to them, or they overheard something that somebody else said that's hurting them, that's not giving them the space to be approved. And so I always have to figure out, what am I saying? And am I saying it in the right tone? Am I saying it in the right way? You know, Black folks, especially me, whatever I'm about to say is on my face. And so normally it's my facial expression that's speaking it. And so I have to make sure that I'm cognizant of my facial expression. Sometimes, Marcy, we will do better at work. And we will treat our colleagues and our bosses and other people great, but then we treat family like, child, you don't belong here. And that's what I try to make sure that we create in our space.
Yes. Well, from what I see, and I know I'm on the outside looking in, but I believe that you all are doing a great job, you know, with your children. Like, the patience is amazing. But I wanna go back for a moment to what you said about your dad and the call that you made to him. How did your life with him and in that situation, how did it change after that step of obedience?
It changed. It was, I don't want to say a 360, because that's going back in the same direction. But it was definitely a major turn. When I think about just how I was able to, it felt like weights were lifted from my shoulders. It really felt like freedom. Like, I couldn't go to sleep the next night. He traveled down now my dad is a Jehovah's Witness, and I grew up Baptist, very Baptist. My dad was actually in the Baptist church as a deacon, and then converted into Jehovah's Witness, which he still is today. And so I want to lay that foundation, because what I'm about to say next is just a different experience than you think of a typical Jehovah's Witness. And I'm not outing him. I'm just saying this is what God has done. He has not missed, and he still lives in Arkansas, has not missed a Thanksgiving or a Christmas every year. Ever since we've had our children, he constantly, he came down a couple of days after Graceland was born. When Theotis the third, who was our second child, was in the hospital, he drove down, didn't tell his wife nothing, came down and said he had to see his first grandson born. And so I think, and I know that phone call on Scholastic Court in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, healed not only me, but it healed him. It gave him access to my heart, and it gave me access to his heart. And as a Jehovah's Witness, to see him with bearing gifts to my children, seeing my stepmother sending things. Hey, do y'all need anything? Are y'all good? There's not a year that goes by that we don't get this big, huge box sent from Arkansas of all these goodies in it for our children and us. And so understanding that, it unpacked some things. We had our first father and son trip. We went to Maryland to see my uncle, just me and him. And we're still trying to plan our next one. And we're trying to figure out what else can we do. He called me last week saying, hey, what are y'all doing for Thanksgiving? I said, I don't know. Call us, because we might be in South Carolina. And he said, you know what? That might be better. And so seeing the impact of one phone call, one
One
free you.
obedience. One
Obedience.
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 Oh
And
my,
allowing it not to be timed.
right,
I didn't know what I was
right,
going to say.
right,
That call that I made, I didn't have any expectations of time limits. I wanted to make sure that however long it took, I was going to be free. I heard my grandmother too in this conversation saying, I'm going to be here with you. I'm
mm,
here with you. And she had already passed. And she said, I'm here
mhm.
with you. I can hear her sweet humming as I was calling and as I was ringing.
Wow.
I didn't know he was going to answer. And Marcy, normally, if I call my father during this late hour, he would not answer.
Wow.
He answered and I woke him up and he
Mm,
said, I'm here. And it went on with this long thing where he told me, Alex, my dad wasn't there.
mm,
And I could only do the best I knew how.
mhm,
And then I repented to God because I said, God, I'm sorry, because I started questioning God, like, God, why did you let this happen?
mhm, mhm.
But I didn't know that I was freeing
Yeah,
a
yeah,
48-year-old man
yeah,
at the
yeah,
time
yeah.
and unlocking memory in his bank and
Right,
saying, you're
right,
healed from that.
right, right. And healing not only the generation behind you, but moving forward, your son won't have to endure the things that you did because, and we know how the enemy will try to use generational curses, use that trauma that goes down through the bloodline to just perpetuate. But God has used you as this pivotal point in your family to heal. And so, at times we question why we get hit the way we get hit or why we have the battles we have. Honey, sometimes all you're going to do is go back to that moment and say, oh, Satan's still trying to hit me for that one because like, you've blocked it for the rest of the generations that come out of you. You have blocked that thing. And that's amazing. Like, that is amazing how, and getting back into the seed thing, child, you would think I'm a farmer as much as I think about seed. I don't know if I ever planted anything, like a true seed, like that kind of seed, a physical seed. But you think about, you have now, not only did you dig up what was done to you, but you have taken that obviously fertile ground and now you've planted something that changes everything. It changes everything. And I know how sometimes the enemy will try to skip a generation and go, but it's like once we know a thing, once we see a thing, once we've lived a thing, if there was ever a tendency that you saw because you know it, you can pluck it up quick. You can dig it up quickly in anybody around you. And I believe that it could not just be to you, but this is something that, like you said, when you go out, when you speak, it's something that can heal so many others when they just stop and get number one, the forgiveness, and then the story. So that is beautiful. And I know we could talk all day, but we can't. But it has been so good. And this conversation has been so different than a lot of the other. This will be episode 20, I think.
Yeah.
2021, because it ain't gonna fit in one thing. Um, but yeah, this conversation has been different than any of the others I've had. I've enjoyed and loved all of them. And I know I'm just grateful that we give God the opportunity to flow the way he wants to flow. I didn't come in with not one note this time. Sometimes I will have them. But I'm just grateful that we were both open to allow God to do what he does. to just be God. And so before we go, I do have two quick questions.
Okay.
So if you could name one song from the soundtrack of your life, what would it be?
That's a great question. God, you got me tripped up. This is not the end.
Oh,
I would say that this is not the end.
that's good.
Yeah, every battle that I've faced, I've always thought that it was the end, but it was just the beginning of freedom.
Oh, that's real good. That's good. You did a good trip up then. And then let's see. If you could put a slogan on any billboard for the world to see, what would it be?
Don't allow the situations to confuse you of your God-given purpose and destiny,
Okay,
because he's trying to.
gotcha. That's good, sir. That's good. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure that at some point, because I want to do some kind of roundtable discussions and maybe meet in this virtual space with different people. And so I'm sure that I will have you back on at some point. I don't know how long we're going to do this. I'm going to do it till the Lord says not to do it. But I just want to thank you for sharing your life with us, for being transparent with us, for allowing us into your space so that someone else could receive the healing that they need. So I just want to tell you, I thank you and I love you.
Thank
And
you.
to all of you, thank you for joining us for the Sister Speak Brother Break show. We hope that you'll come back next week, same place, same time, to continue your healing. We love you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you've been blessed by today's show, feel free to let us know. And if you'd like to sow into this ministry, become a sponsor, or contact us, you can reach us at 803-221-0169. Or you can email us at the ssbbshow@gmail.com. Let's continue this journey together. Missed any of our past episodes? Catch up on past shows on my YouTube channel at Marcy Bush, MarceyBush. And be sure to subscribe so you won't miss any future episodes.